Let's move on to talking about team culture. And we can't really talk about team culture without organizational culture. The two are interrelated. But what do we mean by organizational culture? That is a culture or a way of behaving, or even in more simple terms, just a way of doing stuff that is shared by all members or the vast majority of members of an organization. So it's not necessarily explicit or defined, it's just a way of doing things that is observable among the population. It provides a sense of structural stability because that way of doing things is an enabler to the activities of the organization. But there are also organizational subcultures, especially in large organizations. And when we talk about organizational culture, we are using the same language that we use to describe culture more generally: national cultures, religious cultures, cultures of communities of practice or social communities. So culture has multiple different dimensions, and we don't want to be fooled into thinking that organizational culture is any different in its fundamental makeup from our regular understanding of culture. And how would we understand team culture that sits within organizational culture? We would see a team culture to be represented in having a shared perception of the environment, and that will be a shared perception that is specific to the environment in which the team operates. So team members may have a different perception potentially on perhaps a social level, but in terms of their function within the team, a good strong team culture will show shared perception. There will be shared norms, roles, and patterns of interaction. There's deliberately an image of the US military here, but we can think of military culture, and within that, the kind of cultures that are established within, for example, army battalions that have established their own norms, their own conventions of ways of doing things. They have a shared perception of the understanding of the different roles, and they have a means of interacting. And those patterns of interaction, they extend to physical, non-verbal, and verbal communication, and indeed the rhythms of those different forms of communication. And that culture is going to be something that evolves. There will be characteristics of a team culture that are consciously and explicitly imposed or attempted to be imposed upon a team, but it's also quite an organic thing that will develop out of early behavior and early experiences together, the nature of the leadership, and the broader organization within which the team sits. A team culture will have impacts on key issues like the nature of support and enabling and helping behaviors that the team expresses, and its attitude towards training, for example. So team culture will influence the way in which people are predisposed towards new entrants to the team and how training is done, and that training behavior also relates to the learning attitude of the team. Again, I've mentioned that we will cover that in a later lecture.